Welcome to Your Money with Leo Daprile. I'm Leo Daprile, and each week on AM570, Dan Rivers and I will talk about anything and everything to do with your money. If you ever have questions, please feel free to call me at 330-533-6936, or you can email me at leo@gemyoung.com. Enjoy the show.
This episode of Your Money with Leo Daprile is sponsored by Grange Insurance.
Leo has advisory services offered through Gem Young Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Well, here we are. The stock market is still holding pretty steady here, although the jobs report is terrible. Non-farm payrolls fell again. And what are we estimating? About 22 million people are now unemployed?
So here was the context for the show. I know everybody's been talking about how ugly these numbers are, but the point I wanted to bring up today, Dan, is we started talking about this a month ago. And this is about with our money managers and how we go about running our business and how we go about helping our clients. We didn't wait for these numbers to come out and say they were going to be awful. We were doing projections a month ago. And if you remember, we talked about some of these numbers. In fact, we had projections that were 23, 24%. The reason when these ugly numbers came out on Friday, the reason the market went up on Friday is because the numbers, although they're ugly, they're not as bad as everybody expected them to be. So that was why you got the positive reaction in the market last Friday.
Okay, so not as bad. We've got to see these things go back the other way before we start to get some confidence back in the market, though. The market, I know you have been talking about the market has recovered, but there's still volatility ahead. Do you expect there to be a big pullback yet?
I don't know that, Dan. What I'm surprised to see is actually in the last week, I've actually seen the volatility begin to subside. It's almost like people have embraced the fact that this is going to be an awful quarter. And like I said, with good money managers, they've gotten out of all the high-risk assets already. So they're not worried about those getting pounded even more, because I think you're going to see sectors get pounded. Again, it's going to be travel and leisure, the airlines. I think you're going to see terrible numbers coming out of them, but that's just going to be the second quarter. We'll see with, the state of Ohio opening up today. From what I'm able to see, that there's a lot of people that are itching to get out. I know that runs the risk of additional infection, but I think this is just an example of the human condition. People want to get out. And, let me tie this back to the unemployment numbers. I think the reason, although the unemployment numbers look ugly, the consensus is, and again, let's go back to psychology, and let's go back to worker psychology, business owner psychology, and investor psychology, because it's all very important to where we go from here. Most businesses believe that the layoff of workers, and workers believe that the situation of this unemployment is temporary. If you go back to 2008 and 2009, people didn't believe that. They didn't believe their job loss was temporary. A lot of them felt it to be permanent. So that created a lot more lack of confidence in the economy, which really pulled back spending. But now people are sitting there saying, I think I can look over the fence right now, and I think in a couple of months, or when they get this vaccine, which I'm amazed at the pace companies are racing to get this done, and I think we're going to see one sooner than we expect. But once we get that, to me, that's the last piece of the confidence picture of what we need to have to continue to come out of this. So I think part of the reason the volatility is settling down is people are, getting used to it. People are saying, okay, it's not as bad as we thought. It's bad, but it could have been a lot worse. So
do you think these companies actually look at the medical side of this then? Are they looking at the vaccine and banking? I guess let me rephrase that. Are they putting their optimism in the fact that we could get a vaccine? Do they look at it that closely and say, you know what, that's a pretty good shot out here? And the second part of that question, are they typically right? Do they have information that we don't?
I don't believe that. I think what they're looking at, Dan, if I had to speculate on where I think they're looking at it, businesses have now gotten to the point where they've gotten over the hysterical fear, and now they're looking at it saying, how can I reopen my business in a safe way so that I can start running my business again until that vaccine comes out? And that's what I think you're going to see start to happen. You're going to see businesses running at maybe 50% capacity, but they're going to be running. And one thing, as a small business owner, and I can tell you that every small business owner that I know, they're resourceful people. And they're mindful of what their revenue stream is. And they're mindful of what they think they're going to bring in. So they're not going to operate businesses to the same expense structure as they did prior to this. They're going to figure out how to run their businesses at half capacity, even if they're just paying their bills for now. And talking to a lot of my friends that are in business, they're at that point by saying, look, as long as we're staying open for the next 3 to 6 months, and as long as we're paying our bills and can remain open, we're going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about that, if they are finding ways to do things better, cheaper, they could actually be more profitable. And would that be some of the optimism from Larry Kudlow? And by the way, what do you think about Larry Kudlow and Steve Mnuchin running this recovery?
I think they're doing a great job. I think they have been tasked with an enormous challenge, and it was an enormous challenge quickly. I think there's been some hiccups in it, and they readily admit that. But I think the way they've been structuring getting cash back into the economy, the way they've been working with the Federal Reserve to make sure that there's liquidity, which is really important, especially in the bond market. So I think there's been a lot of great successes, because just look at the overall stability, and that's what you got to look at, the end result, not maybe every little detail that didn't go quite right, but they got the big things right, in my opinion.
Okay. So Larry Kudlow, he's always optimistic, and he seems like a grandfather out there that kind of peels you off the wall and sits you down and says, hey, the sky is falling, but we have a way to fix it. Right?
Right.
That's
right.
kind of where he's at. What do you make about this? And you've probably heard me vocally say that I just think it's just terrible. But, this thing about, some of our representatives, including our own, come out and said we should be giving everybody $2,000 a month, everybody over 16 years of age. First of all, I ran the numbers on that, and it's more than $5.5 trillion. But I don't know if people think that can be done. And if they do, I feel very badly for our country if people actually think that we could afford to print that much money without having an effect on our currency.
Well, those are election year responses, in my opinion, and I don't think they're responsible statements to make. And I think if you dig deep into the unemployment numbers, and if you look at the unemployment numbers and say who's really the most at risk and who's doing okay, because just because there's a broad stroke of numbers, who's really unemployed, right? The most vulnerable part of our society is those folks that have just a high school degree or less. That has the highest percentage of people unemployed, and a lot of those people are working in the service industry. They're working at the hotels, all of those places where there is no business. So there's a very vulnerable sector. The more you go up the line, the less percentage of people are truly unemployed. Okay? So those people, there's a lot of people out there that don't need help, man.
The people that are more prepared and had a job that was unique and a skill set that they really had to have that, the employer had to have it, they are less hurt. Would that be just typically that's a normal reaction? Because your bottom line workers, the people that can be easily replaced or when you shut down, they're always the most vulnerable, correct?
Right. And that's the sector that has the highest concentration. I believe the numbers, Dan, is the most vulnerable section. Unemployment rate is closer to 30%. Mm-hmm. But with people with a college degree or better, their unemployment rate's in the 8%.
Now, what about
to give you an example.
What about a pent-up demand here? And I noticed it the other day just talking to Terry Seamack at Seamack's Northside TV. He said he couldn't get freezers, and he said some of the appliances were in short supply because, the manufacturers aren't putting out what they once were. So I guess we don't see it every day because you and I don't need a washer, a dryer, or a freezer every day, but there is such a large population here that there's X number of them probably sold every day. So that doesn't go away when these things break. So does that put this into a resurgence of demand for retail?
I believe so. I believe that people, Dan, they're not going anywhere. People are sitting on a lot of money. The savings rate's spiking. because people just don't have anything to do with their money because they haven't been able to go anywhere. So that's why I think once things start opening up and people, we're social beings by nature, and we've been cooped up for 7 weeks. So a lot of people are going to be itching to go out. I think you're going to see a lot of people going out responsibly. They're going to wear the masks. They're going to be smart about it. But I think you're going to have more of a resurgence quicker than people anticipate.
Okay. And that would go for the automobile industry, too, although the automobile industry has gotten so doggone expensive anymore. It's almost impossible for people to buy cars, so most of the people are renting them or leasing them, I guess is the proper term. And but there's still you could probably go out there and define it if you want to search hard enough. You could find that there is a certain number of automobiles bought every week, and that hasn't been happening. So that's just put off, isn't it? Essentially, people get back when they feel like they can go back and go to the showrooms. They'll start buying automobiles again out of necessity.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, and I'll give you one example. My friend Bob Davis from Fairway Ford and I spoke last week, and he told me that they've sort of reinvented their business because of everything going on. Mm-hmm. Dan, he said they haven't skipped a beat. Their sales are fine.
I've heard that with a lot of people, too. In fact, my son, as I said, my youngest son works in the restaurant industry in New York City, manages a couple of restaurants, and he said that Sunday's Mother's Day was almost a typical Mother's Day in carryout.
Yeah,
now,
I believe it.
That's a hell of a statement when you think people are dining in typically, and, alcohol is your big profit margin, and they really don't have that right now. So maybe, there are people out there that have found a way, and I think that there's a lot of people that have been very aggressive in trying to keep their businesses going, and some people have done really well with the carryout business. Something else, the leisure industry, you touched upon that, but Disney Shanghai is opening, and they have now made plans for the Florida Disney to reopen. So it's going to be little by little. I guess my question would be this. Are you kind of to the point where we're going to have to go forward now? We know that the virus is still out there, but we're a lot more careful. We have been basically schooled on how to avoid this. So I don't think I don't think we can turn back at this point, do you? We're opening here in Ohio today.
Yeah, and Dan, I think we also have to be mindful of those at-risk people in our society, those people that really need to work, that haven't been able to work, that we have to give them a safe environment so that they can get back to, because my fear for those people isn't just that they've been out of work. It's the economic scenario that they live within that could, economically crush these people. And I think that's just as big of an emotional toll as a virus. So there's going to be a lot of people in this country that really need to work. So, for those of us that are fortunate that we can choose where and how we work, maybe we always don't identify with those people that just have to work. So I think we have to get that open, the economy open slowly, smartly, for lots of reasons. And that's my human component to that we have to also be mindful of those people too and give them the opportunity.
Yeah, let's turn to our investors now. First of all, if you're a young person and you're under 40 years of age, you've got lots of time to make up any kind of losses you have, so it's pretty much carved in stone that you stay where you are. But let's turn a little bit to our older investors right now that don't have the time to make up this money. What is your feeling right now about those people who may need the money in the next 10, 15, 20 years that they have saved and they've taken a hit?
Well, I would, again, Dan, if you're a client of ours, we're unfazed by this because, like we've spoken before, we have the bucket scenario where we have enough cash. I wouldn't be worrying 10, 15 years down the road. I think as long as you have enough short-term type investments, cash-type investments for the next year or two, and I don't think you'll need it that long, I would tell you don't worry about a thing and don't change your long-term plans because of a short-term event. As long as you've done your planning correctly, as long as you have the right folks managing your money, as long as those folks have been proactive and preemptive over the last couple of months, like I said, I'm not worried in that situation. If you haven't done that and you're in a situation where you are maybe in more of a speculative investment and you need some money, I would say, A, don't jump the gun. Do a thorough review of what you have to make sure that what you have really might just be good, and you might need to be patient with it. And if that's a scenario, pull out just what you need to get by, and don't pull out too much just yet. Because, again, look how much we continue to recover. Now, I don't think the rest of the year is going to be a V-shape like a lot of people have been talking about. I think it's going to be more like, I'll use the Nike swoosh, if you will. I think it's going to be that sort of a recovery. So I think, remember we spoke about a month ago, and I'd say we would be range-bound between 23 and 25,000 on the Dow, and that's kind of where we've been, and we're in that prediction. So I don't see anything in the research that I've done, the managers that I've talked to, the portfolio managers that I've talked to. There's nothing new out there that has me changing my position.
Yeah. So that's great great news out there. And, of course, we could get some good news. We're basing this on the current news, basically saying that we are hopeful that a vaccine can be widely distributed to the United States, and that certainly would be a game changer, and people would figure out that they could go back out. Meanwhile, we're going to have to live with this. We're going to have to be careful as we go forward. The counsel of our governor, I know he gets a lot of heat, but I believe that he has the interests of the people in mind as he's saying, let's go back, let's get this right. And one of the things he says, a lot of the mistakes that I have made is because I didn't have enough information. I didn't seek enough information. He decided that he was going to wait on daycare yesterday. And, just an editorial comment from me. I get it. I don't have the small kids. And I see some of the reporters out there, they turn to Mike DeWine and they say, what do you say to the parents out there that don't have daycare to go to? And it's almost as if we are the only people that we can turn to is either the state, the local, or the federal government. Families are important too. Maybe you need to research and look back and see what your family can do. Maybe a neighbor can do. I think it's dangerous to get into this thing that Mike DeWine or President Trump or Governor Cuomo can solve all your problems.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's to your point, this is what made America great in the first place, is we relied on each other. We had our ingenuity, and I'm seeing the ingenuity in the business world every day. And to your point, I've been trying to gather as much information, because every time we go through something like this, I never presume it to be like the past, because even though it might look the same, there's always different facts and circumstances. So we go for that knowledge. And to your point, I think the governor has our best interests at heart, as does our president. I don't think it always comes across that way, especially in an election year.
No, and you know what? They're fallible. They're fallible. I mean, Mike DeWine, I'm sure he looked like he got beat up yesterday a little bit. And, Trump doesn't always get it right. Neither does Cuomo. Neither does Governor Gretchen from up in Michigan. But I think that they are dealing with something they've never dealt with before. Something we touched on last week, and I think it needs to be reiterated. Your clients, even though, they were invested by their age and by their risk tolerance, but that money was actively managed as the market was falling, right? You have managers that are looking and assessing this every day. You weren't just saying, well, we're going to ride this all down and then ride it all the way back.
That's correct. That's correct. That's something my experience has taught me through time. That's why this whole thing doesn't seem to faze me, Dan, is because I try to always learn from my lessons in the past and try to get better at what we do. And that's why we need to be reactive in these times and not just cross our fingers and hope we did the right thing. So going into it, you always have to be prepared for this. And I always like to tell my clients, in good times, the way we manage money, we always don't look great because we don't have you overexposed. Sometimes when things are looking great, we're really trying to hit singles and doubles because of times like this, because everybody would love to predict times like this, and nobody ever does. And by the time you realize what's going on, it's too late. So if you were going to make portfolio decisions to change things, this really should have happened in January, not in May. Yeah, so since we have positioned and prepared for this, our clients are in a position where, A, there's enough cash if they need it, so they don't have to worry about pulling money out at times they don't have to. And B, we still have them positioned appropriately for what their tolerance to risk is for their long-term goals.
If people need a financial manager, give us your information, then I got to run.
Sure. You can call me at 330-533-6936 or email me for anything at leo@gemyoung.com.